Hello guys, welcome to this fresh series of tutorials on Hibernate. In this tutorial we'll be visiting all the basics of Hibernate and we'll see how an Hibernate application works. So coming on to Hibernate, and Hibernate basically simplifies the development of Java application to interact with the database. So as the definition states that we can use Hibernate to interact with the database, and Hibernate is an open source lightweight ORM, and ORM basically stands for object relational mapping. ORM is basically a tool which is used to interact with the database, and earlier now we were using our legacy JDBC API to interact with the database, but Hibernate is an extension over our legacy API, that is JDBC, and it reduces a lot of code and it has major enhancements over our JDBC API, and we'll see how this works using various examples in our tutorial. And as this diagram states up here, first of all we have our Java application, and Java applications, in you already know, we have objects, and this ORM tool basically utilizes the objects from my Java application and then it maps these to DB objects. And in Java objects, you know, we can have objects corresponding to a class also, and DB has several objects, like a table is also a DB object. So we basically map our Java objects with the tables present in database, and that is achieved through a tool called as ORM tool, which is object relational mapping. Now suppose I have a class called as student, and my student has a roll number and my student has an ID. Now this is my student class in Java, and similarly I am having a student table in my Oracle database, and this Oracle database is also having two columns, and first is roll underscore number and its second column is ID. And now my object corresponding to my student class can be, if I initialize anything using constructor, then it can be student, that is student1, and it can be new, and we can give any values in this. Suppose my first is roll number and ID, I can give anything. So this is the typical way we just initialize an object, and this is my object. And now we need to map the variables of this class to the columns of my database class, and this mapping is done via ORM tool in Hibernate. So we just map the members of our class with the column names of my tables, and this is my, I can create an object of my student class. So these are my Java objects, and this student table which is present in my Oracle database, this is an object corresponding to my database. So the object mapping between my class and my table is taken care by ORM tool. Whenever I'm sending some values, or I want to persist or save values from my student class into my table, then ORM comes in picture. And similarly, if I retrieve something from my database table, then these database objects need to be converted into my Java objects, and that conversion is also handled by ORM tool. So it is the power or capability of the ORM tool with which it can translate the objects or my Java objects into my database objects while persisting the value from my Java class into my Oracle database, or if I am retrieving some values from my database or my student table in Oracle, then it takes care of conversion of these two columns or these database objects into my student object. So this is how ORM works. Now don't get boggled by this concept. We'll be doing some examples on how to send or persist or get the values from the database, and then you will be clear with it. Now why we use Hibernate? Now Hibernate has many advantages. First of all, Hibernate is open source and lightweight, And the open source, is one of the biggest advantages of an API, so that you can manipulate anything. And Hibernate has fast performance. The performance of Hibernate framework is fast because cache is internally used in Hibernate framework. So in Hibernate framework, we can cache the data, which makes it faster. And by default, we have two types of caches in Hibernate framework, and those are first level cache and second level cache. And if you don't specify any cache, then by default first level cache is used. And next is database independent query. And Hibernate basically uses a Hibernate query language. And in Java, we have object oriented language, that is OOPS. And similarly, Hibernate uses a Hibernate query language, and it generates a database independent queries. So this is one of the biggest advantages of Hibernates. You just read that it generates a database independent query. So we can use any kind of database with Hibernate, be it Oracle, be it MySQL, and we can use any database, because Hibernate has its own language, that is Hibernate query language, which it uses to generate all the queries. And as it says, so we don't have to write any database specific queries. And next is automatic table creation. And Hibernate framework provides us various properties, and we'll see in our configuration file we have a HBM to DDL auto property, and which we can specify to create a table also. So we don't have to write any query, we just have to specify our column names and it will create table automatically for us, and we'll see this example. And it also simplifies the joins, and if we want to fetch the data from multiple tables, then Hibernate can work for us. And last is provide query statistics and database results. And Hibernate also has the features with which it can provide various query statistics, like how much time it took to execute, and various stuff like this. So this is why we primarily use Hibernate, and this was just the overview, and we'll be discussing everything and once we start coding applications.